the opportunity, obviously, the fast bowling discussion was a very big one in the lead up to this test. Obviously, there'll be differing views through that process, but the opportunity to, give the selectors a little bit of a rap regarding that, they held firm, and I think many of you would say that there's been some benefit to that process. So I think, I think on reflection, it's been a reasonably positive couple of days. Obviously, we've all seen for the Sri Lankans, obviously, injuries are a difficult part of the world game at the moment, and let's not overstate that. They had some difficulty yesterday, and with injuries, as we've also experienced in this this summer. So it's a part of the game at the moment that we've all got to try and be very good at, and we're trying to be the best at it, and we've got a long way to go. But it's one of those things that if we try and play with 11 players, it makes a significant difference to the outcomes of the game. So it was an opportunity, firstly, to publicly sort of support the selectors and say that's been tough. It's been a tough couple of days and weeks, and they deserve a little bit of praise at that stage. But secondly, obviously, to deal with something that has brought a lot of conversation and obviously have a little bit of reflection on it. Not just in a one-game presence, but obviously we've had 5 tests of it now, and I've set up and I've openly said that we've made some mistakes as well during the summer, but at the same stage there've been some positives as well, and I want to reflect on those as well.
Can I ask you about Shane Watson, mate? Last night he sort of said for the first time that he may consider giving up bowling, or at least ponder it. What's your take on that, and do you think that'd be a good idea for him to prolong his international career?
So obviously at the end of the summer or the end of the test series, Shane will have the opportunity to sit down with a few of us and have that discussion. The selectors have been very keen on having people that are multi-skilled across the board. You've seen many of our players bowl this summer, even the wicketkeeper. Look, that will be obviously part of the discussion. But look, I think the selectors are open to any discussion with any player regarding how they see that they can get the best out of them. And ultimately, we're after performance, and we're after people that can perform their skills and their core skills at the best of their ability. And if Shane wants to open that dialogue, he's absolutely free to do that, and to be judged on those performances. And I'm sure the selectors will take that into consideration.
Just one more on Shane. There was a hell
I don't believe you. One more on Shane.
Because you know me, 2 more. There was a hell of a lot made of Mitchell Starc being rested, but was there any consideration that Shane might be rested, given he bowled 47 overs in Hobart?
Yeah, there was some consideration of it, but look, it was looked at as a collective. Obviously, he's multi-skilled. And he can bring more than a couple of attributes to the game. So, when we talk about players missing a game, it's or managing their workload or whatever terminology you want to use. A lot of this is around young fast bowlers, and looking after those young fast bowlers is a pretty interesting or pretty core principle of what we're trying to do.
Can I just hold it there because you've got
rattling keys?
Yeah. Do you want to come in?
It's embargo till 2015 or something?
You ready to go? Sorry, mate.
Just going on with Watto, from reading his quotes last night, I sort of got the impression that he actually had the niggle, or he felt something going in, and it got worse as the game went on. Is
that's pretty accurate. So it was a niggle. It was nothing more than a niggle, and
but you felt it going in, like it was before the game.
Yeah, but like, let's be reasonable. There are, if you're a professional sportsman, you have niggles. Yeah. You have going in. He'd seen, physios aren't usually twiddling their thumbs in the lead up to test matches. So, yes, he had a niggle. So did a lot of guys, but it did get worse during the test match, and so as it got worse, obviously that had the implications on his involvement overall, and obviously it's finished reasonably short, and that's a good chance for a few blokes to get over a lot of niggles over the next couple of days.
So in hindsight, given his history, should he not have played, or if he's going to be a professional cricketer, does he just have to play in those circumstances and see how he goes? Look,
going into the test match, obviously a lot of guys had niggles going in, and we had to look at that from a whole collective basis, and look, that was a possibility. It was a possibility, but we know that he can contribute. It was we know he had a heavy workload in Hobart, but so did Peter Siddle, so did Mitchell Stark. And we knew from the lesson from Adelaide to Perth that taking a collective group of guys all with high injury risks were, you can't take everybody in together. In the end, we knew that Shane could contribute. He did contribute with both ball early in for a couple of overs, but also with the bat. And it was a pretty positive contribution. So I think I applaud the selectors. They made some decisions sort of to deal with those workloads collectively, not on just dealing with one individual.
And last one on Watto from me. Yeah. What is your preference, or do you have a wider idea of the preference of, do you prefer Watto to keep bowling, or would you be quite happy if he just played as a batsman?
Oh look, and this is far more a philosophy around the selectors. Absolutely, we have a selection policy, and very much they do want that multi-skill ability collectively. So that's just not about Shane Watson. That's they love people being able to bat, bowl field, bring some leadership to the table, and having more than one skill, and it is an important part of what those guys do. But when the selectors sit down, they do look at that ability, but also they look at the mix as well. And if you've got, if Shane or anybody wants to be a batsman only, well, somebody else has got to be able to take up the overs. And that is consideration that the selectors think about when they're putting not only together a squad of 13 like yesterday, but also when they're putting together 11. How can we make sure that Michael and Mickey and the selectors and the team have a bowling armoury that can work together and deal with a James Patterson from Adelaide? And we got a little bit exposed there, obviously, which had flow-on effects for Perth and probably had flow-on effects afterwards. So that's something we do consider and need to consider every time that 11 people are picked.
And sorry, I'll just ask one more, sorry.
Okay.
Mickey Arthur said on his press conference yesterday that he could no longer get overs out of Clark and Hussey. Now, I understand Clark because he's obviously carrying a hamstring. What's wrong with Hussey that stops him from bowling?
Oh, look, I think what he's meaning, and to be clear, I think, is just relying on lots of overs from Mike Hussey. I think having a couple of overs here and there, we saw Bob Quiney had to step up in those first couple of tests this year. The reliance on Mike taking, at 37 years of age, a lot of overs is something that we can't rely on. Being able to do the odd over here and there, we've seen Dave Warner bowl, not only here and take wickets, but also in the West Indies earlier in the calendar year. So that multi-skill is being pushed. I know Usman Khawaja bowled even in the Chairman's 11 and got a wicket against Sri Lanka. So that message is getting through from the selectors. And that those who work hard on their fielding, work hard on their other attribute. And we've seen bowlers bat this year, and bat very successfully, with a couple of them, pulling off half centuries, and obviously Mitch Johnson's knock yesterday was, quite outstanding. So we want that ability to bat deep. We want that ability for batsmen to bowl, and Johnny Verity and Mickey Arthur with the selection panel, the rest of the selection panel, do drum that in.
Pat, are you working on getting some kind of succession plan in place regarding the captaincy, given that Shane Watson's injury, or him getting injured again, has sort of exposed a real leadership vacuum, I suppose? There's no one to deputise for Michael. Well, no obvious candidate anyway. Yeah,
sure. No, and look, they've got to pick the team first in terms of dealing with the team first, and then there are people that have had leadership opportunities throughout the year, and we've had looks at that during the year. There have been leadership seminars run in Darwin when we were up there previously in the camp during the year. But at the moment, this hasn't changed since the last test. Obviously, Michael and Shane were both, there were both questions, obviously, little niggles, and Michael's hamstrings well documented. So we have planning in place. Look, there's no obvious answer at the moment. We have a young team. We have a young team in transition, but many people have captained. Many people have had leadership opportunities. David Warner captained the Thunder at different times. You've had Ed Cowan take Australia A away. David Warner, I think, captained Chairman's 11 the year before. We've had a few people take opportunities like that. So look, at the moment, Michael's the captain, but we have leadership opportunities. One of those things that many captains say is that it's one of those things that you need to be in the job, learn, take those opportunities, and we'll look for those opportunities as the year progresses at different times, or as opportunity presents.
Do you think Michael's long-term successor is in the team now?
I probably don't want to speculate on that. Look, we have to plan for that, but there are obviously lots of leadership opportunities in Australian cricket. You can lead your state team, you can lead a BBL team, you can lead a Chairman's 11 side or a Prime Minister's 11 side. So we do utilise those leadership opportunities at different times, and if you reflect on the last 18 months or so, we have done that with that sort of succession planning in place. So historically, you would say yes, historically. But that's genuine speculation at the moment. Michael's only been in the job a year, and we'd be hoping to get a lot more out of him.
Yeah, sure. Can I just press you on, if he doesn't play in Sydney, who's most likely to be the side?
So the process has got to go to the board. We'd have to absolutely, we'd have to put that process through the board, and we'd also have to show them what we've done in terms of that succession planning for that. So we had to put some provisions in place. I can't really speculate unless I've got that green light from the board. So that process still exists.
Pat, when you took on the job, did you feel, or you're looking at what the Argus Review said, did you feel that there were issues wider in Australian cricket with the concept of leadership and guys taking on roles and responsibilities to lead other players?
Look, when I first stepped in, it was raised and it was part of the Argus Review, that leadership opportunity. So there's been plenty of, Rod Marsh is running a mentoring program with ex-players and ex-leaders around. You've seen that we've had ex-test players within the tent at every test opportunity. We had Alan Border up in Brisbane. But at the same stage, a lot of leadership, I think many of you would argue, there were questions on Michael Clarke when he first came into the role. I don't think there's too many questions about Michael Clarke now. And the growth in him has been extraordinary. So I think the next captain, wherever he is and wherever he comes from, will probably have to do a little bit of learning on the job. I don't think there's a lot of jobs you can do and a lot of work you can do prior that's going to get you ready for a role like this. So we will do everything we can. We'll run the leadership courses. We'll take opportunities. You'll get people to lead in tour matches and tour games to do that. But ultimately, under the cauldron, that's the place where you have to learn and you have to grow them. And that's every captain, the first time they captain Australia, I'm sure, would be a reasonably daunting task.
Pat, in terms of finding extra overs, Glenn Maxwell could well be the short-term answer and the long-term answer if Watto does bowl less or stop bowling. What do you think of that? Yeah,
look, obviously Glenn is a player, performed extremely well in the UAE in the ODI period. He was selected both for Australia A and the Chairman's 11, so I applaud once again the selector's been really consistent here and sent a very clear message to him, and we've been communicating with Greg Shippert at the Stars regarding he's got to be ready for both forms of the game. It's a difficult time. But he bowled a significant amount against South Africa in the Australia A game. He bowled a reasonable amount in the Chairman's 11 against Sri Lanka. So I think if he's called upon, his preparation's been pretty good, and I'm sure that he'd handled himself very, very well. So the first bit is he's in the squad, and that's a wonderful accolade for him. And then the selector on duty, the captain and the coach can deal with the 11 in the next couple of days.
Pat, just back to the rotation and resting of bowlers quickly. A question a lot of people have had is during the Ashes, would the same principles apply, or would caution be thrown to the wind more or less just because everything's on the line and you want to play your best team in every test?
I think the overriding principle is that we want to be able to have 11 players who are playing. We're a far better chance when there's 11 playing rather than trying to win a test with 10 or 9 or that sort of situation, and we've seen that many times. So, we will pick the best team that can, we believe that we'll be able to finish the test and perform absolutely optimally, there are no reserves in Test cricket. You can't go and pull someone off the sidelines when someone's injured. So, no, look, going to the Ashes, it will be the best team. But we also believe this team that just played recently, was the best team that could perform on Boxing Day. And I think Michael talks about that in Perth. This is the best team to play this Test. We're not doing this for jokes or laughs or just to be controversial. We're doing this to put out the best team, and we're doing this to win. We're not doing this just about succession planning, and we're not doing it to try and be controversial. We're absolutely trying to put out the guys who are fresh, hungry, who can turn up on that day and give an absolutely fantastic performance and raise the competition between all those players. So I think, I think sometimes that message gets lost. We want to win, and we want to win every game, and we want to win every series.
Have you got the players on side though? When Mitchell Starc wasn't happy about being rested, and previously other bowlers have said, I just want to play every Test. Has there been a discussion with the bowlers to say this is the way it is and you've got to get on board?
Yeah, look, I think Dean Jones put a blog out the other day. Of course, Mitch wanted to play. What's the alternative? He doesn't want to play. Of course, he wants to play. That's the right sort of behaviour for any player. We want them to want to play. We want them to want to win. But there's only 11 spots, and and it's a fairly iconic Test, and I think that was pretty big for Mitch, and it was obviously, we had a chance to win the series here. So I absolutely understand his disappointment, and he was disappointed, as would have been anybody that was missing out on selection. They just probably wasn't as front and centre in the media eye. So look, I think he's a really integral part. He's a young bowler at 22, and Steve Finn, who's in the same category, hasn't done back-to-back Tests. Mitchell Starc's done 2 so far. Has the opportunity to do 3 throughout the summer. And look, for me, he'd be the most durable young bowler in the world. And at that stage, and I think that's actually for the negativity we're getting at the moment, he's been going reasonably well. But we want to make sure he continues to go reasonably well and not overplay him and overstress him and be another statistic. But look, young bowlers get injured. We're trying to look after them the best we can.
Pat, tell me just about the potential Test players for Australia. Just how concerned are you about them playing 2020 and that they may jeopardise their Australian Test career?
Probably rephrase it. What do you sort of...
So say Glenn Maxwell, he's been playing for the T20 for the Stars. Now that he's in the squad, just how concerned are you that those players, such as Usman Khawaja, are playing T20 when they're about to get a call up for Australia?
No, look, and this is where the BBL teams deserve a lot of praise. They all got letters sort of late November on a ODI and Test squad preparation. Can you work with us for red ball practice during that period? Jackson Bird was out here only the other day with a red ball practising in the possibility he would be called up. And so the BBL teams deserve a lot of praise that they've been practising both of those. So the test, the selection panel put together that group late November. Troy Cooley out of the COE has been working with those state coaches to make sure appropriate things have been put in place to get those guys prepared, knowing where the calendar is. I think, our heads are already 6 months ahead, 9 months ahead, 12 months ahead. So these fixture clashes are well and truly known in advance, and this is why we've got to, when we get the opportunity to play a Chairman's 11, Australia A, there are strategic selections, very much with the selectors have been able to forecast out a month or 2 months or 3 months. And this is where, the selectors do have a plan that the players will see the next week sometimes, and the selectors, on the other hand, will probably have a month, 2 month, 3 month view. So Glenn and Usman, they were obviously selected for the Chairman's 11. We copped a bit of criticism for them coming out of that. But Greg Shippard, it was quite overt in saying this is about Test cricket, and I think the selectors have been very consistent in their selection, sending a message both to the state and BBL coaches, but also to the player himself, that he needs to be looking at all forms and get ready for all forms.
Pat, given the quite different requirements that we're now seeing unfolding for bowlers, pace bowlers in particular, as opposed to batsmen. How's it evolving from a contract and match payment point of view? How are they being? How are bowlers who are being rested or wanting to play and not being dropped for reasons of form? How's that going?
So look, the MOU, which is the agreement between the Players Association and Cricket Australia, really clearly lay out resting and injury payments, and so if a player is out due to an issue not related to form, there are payment schedules in place and all that sort of thing to deal with that. So that hasn't changed materially for years. That has been part of the previous MOU, and that was flown on. So that shouldn't be an issue for those players. So the MOU, which is a 5-year agreement that was signed July 1st or whatever, that goes through from last year, is a fairly well laid out structure, and the players, due to historical reasons, should be well and truly across that schedule.